So let's go ahead to 1978. And you and Scott are stuck in traffic.
Yes.
Scott would later graduate from DePauw in 1986, as you mentioned. But
Absolutely.
how did this, put us in that car. How did this idea to have a 24-hour sports network come to you?
First, I had to get fired, so I had the opportunity to do this. If you don't get fired at least once in your life, you just haven't lived, you know. I was working with the Hartford Whalers as their communications director. They missed the playoffs. They fired everybody in the front office. We never skated in any of the losses or wins of the team, but anyway, they threw us out. And we had been working with the hockey club, with the cable operators in Connecticut. So we were kind of heading down a path to do things really in Connecticut. But then getting fired by the Whalers didn't endear them to me, so I didn't want to talk to the Whalers. But we held a bunch of conversations with some cable operators in Connecticut, and one of them gave us the best advice there was. And this led me to adapt early on to don't ever be afraid to ask a question. He said, I've got the number for the RCA SATCOM division sales office in New York City. Here it is. Just call them. And I'm thinking, little guy from the south side of Chicago, I've just been fired. I've been, you know, what am I going to do? But then I also thought I had 3 kids in school, so that kind of helped out. And I picked up the phone and called, and the operator, as I was dialing, I realized the operator's going to put me through to whoever. She doesn't know who I am. She's not going to decide who gets to talk to anybody. She said, I told her who I was, what I wanted. She said, oh, yes, sir, one moment, please. The guy came on the line. He said, my name's Al Parinello. Can I help you? I said, yeah, we want to find out a little bit more of the satellite charges, how it works, and so on, because I had no background in communications. He said, where are you in Connecticut? I thought this was kind of unusual. He said, where are you in Connecticut? I said, just outside Hartford. He said, I'll be up tomorrow morning. What we didn't know, but by my asking the question, it triggered a chain of events that eventually gave us the satellite to do the 24-hour a day. RCA had launched the satellite in 1975. The military occupied half of it. The other half was flying around absolutely empty. They would sell people 2 hours, 5 hours, and the HBO would buy 5 hours at night and so on. When he came up, he said, we have one tariff item that nobody has ever purchased. Well, tell me, give me the idea. This is kind of like, what's behind door number 3? And he said, and Scott was in the room. Scott was really sharp with numbers. And he said, it's a 5-year contract, 24 hours a day, $34,167 a month. Scott says that can't be true. Because the other tariff, you added the others, $1,250 here and $1,250 there, it was like $100,000. What we didn't know is RCA was making every effort to get somebody started on a 24-hour plan. We said, we talked about it, called him back the next morning, and my scientific knowledge comes into play. I said, Al, we'll take one of those things. Because he had told us he told us it was a transponder, but I didn't know that. I said, we'll take one of those. He said, one of what things? One of those 24-hour things we talked about yesterday. He said, you will? He was really surprised that we would take it. So that was really the genesis of what turned out to be ESPN. We now had the satellite. We were driving down to my daughter's birthday on August 16th in the car that you were referring to. And we were saying, how do you fill 24 hours a day? We didn't have any money, we didn't have any equipment, we didn't have any studio, and at that point we didn't even have any land. But those were minor details. They'd come in due time. And they came in due time. And I've often thought about that when we talked to that one phone call to RCA, because you never ever know what the other guy's business is and how it might work with yours and back and forth. And so I've always never stopped asking questions. Yeah. And we were on the road to New Jersey, and I was driving, Scott's in the right seat. We got stuck in a traffic jam outside Waterbury, Connecticut, and he decided to take a nap, and he's laying there, and what are we going to play? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So he leaned over and kind of and he just leaned. He said, I don't play football all day for I care. Guess what? The NCAA has more football games than you can put on. They have more basketball games, and it just kept growing. And in fact, that led us to the idea to pick up the phone and call John Toner at the University of Connecticut, who was the incoming, I didn't know this at the time either, incoming president of the NCAA. He was also very, very enthused about what we might do for the University of Connecticut in the state of Connecticut. And he said, talk to the TV guy, and Bo Coppage at Navy is the current chairman of the TV committee. 2 weeks later, after that phone call, Navy was coming to the University of Connecticut to play a game, and he said, Bo, like we're all buddies, Bo will be here, he'll meet you at the hotel. And the pieces just fell into place, all because we just kept saying, what about, can we do this, can we do that? And you have to have that, some people say no, but you just, when they tell me no, I think they made a mistake. I don't think it was a bad question.
Well, we're going to have time for questions about ESPN itself. Let's just bullet through the first day at ESPN. Give us a 65-second account of.
First day at ESPN,
yeah, it had to be crazy. It
was frantic. The building wasn't finished. We had a guy at 6. We went on the air at 7 o'clock. 6:30, there was a member of the construction crew going down at his regular pace and cleaning the windows, and we'd say, excuse me, and he'd step out of the way, and he'd go back to cleaning his windows. And all of the dignitaries from the NCAA, from Budweiser, our major advertising buy, bigger than any other in history at that point, they're all in this control room. And we had a technical director sitting there pushing buttons, and the monitors are up there and so on. But they were all in the control room so they could see what's happening in the studio. The control room wasn't built yet. There were fake monitors and a fake switcher and everything else. The broadcast was being done from a remote trailer outside the back of the building. We couldn't very well do that. And the highlight that I remember that, and you athletes will appreciate this, the highlight that I remember, our very, very first live program was at 7:30 that night, and it was the Professional Slow Pitch Softball World Series from Louisville, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that exciting or what?
I can remember 1979 watching in the Fidel Bum Room, your early days, badminton and table tennis, there's a lot of stuff.
But this one, the guy that spent $1,380,000 to be exclusively on ESPN, the beer on ESPN, Budweiser, standing right here, right next to my elbow, and the announcer says, and now we're going to go to Louisville, Kentucky for our first live event on ESPN. It's the Slow Pitch Softball World Series featuring the Kentucky Bourbons and the Milwaukee Schlitz, brought to you by Budweiser. He's standing right next to me, and he said, I thought we bought an exclusive. And I said, how do you answer that? I mean, this guy's spending all the money. That was a lot of money in those days for television. And if I had been really sharp and really smart, I would have said, you could have had a better softball team they'd be playing, but I didn't think of that. And he was kidding. He knew it was just the luck of the roll, that's roll the dice that it worked that way. There was tension. We didn't know how long we could go. Nobody had ever gone past 1 o'clock in the morning. Even when I was in television, when Robert Kennedy was assassinated in the late 1960s, when Richard Nixon resigned in the 1970s, didn't hear. None of the networks went past midnight. They just stopped. That's it. Because television then was New York-centric. If it didn't fly in New York, they didn't really care about the rest of us. And they figured everybody in New York, in the Eastern time zones, asleep by 1 o'clock, so that was it. It ended. And we kept going. So we started at 7 o'clock. We went through till 5 o'clock Monday morning. So we went around the clock nearly 60 hours. And nobody had ever done that, and the intriguing thing is they told us it couldn't be done, and our president at that time that we had hired in July was Chet Simmons, the former president of NBC Sports, who was the single most vocal opponent of ESPN right up until we hired him. When he found out his contract wasn't going to be renewed, he thought cable TV sports was a great idea. And that night, we got some interesting reaction from around the country, and as the years have gone by, I have found out that some kids who were 5 or 6 said, I remember my dad telling me, you have to watch this because someday this is going to be a great thing. And I have had athletes who've played at Alabama and played professional sports come up to me and say, I was a kid and my dad told me this, or I watched you when I was 5 years old or something. It's a pretty amazing story.